Obscure Studios in one sentence would be, hey, I've got a cool idea. It was either one of us just going, yeah, yeah, let's do it. Or, we would go to Denny's late at night after we do a show, or we were just hanging out in general. And then one of us would just be sitting there doing our things like, what if we did a show in space? You're listening to Dispatches with Johnny Eberly.
And that was not Johnny Eberly. That was my guest, the actor William C. McDonald, joining me today to celebrate the 20th anniversary of our production company, Obscure Studios.
It is really exciting.
I can't believe we're still here. Will, you've been here since almost the beginning, and so I'm excited to have you help tell the story of this production company that started from nothing and then became almost YouTube famous and
We're
now
so
is
close.
almost podcast famous. We're going to tell the story over the course of the 20 years from 2004 until 2024 and maybe give a preview as to what's coming for the next 20.
Oh boy. All right, let's
So
do it.
I hope you're ready. I think that for 20 years, we have been putting on a very elaborate game of improv.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Would you describe like what the golden rule of improvisation? Because I know you know it,
Oh, the golden always say yes.
right? It's
It's
always
always
yes
yes and.
and right. It's so no matter what crazy idea one of us would have, we would say yes
Yeah.
and we'd always be building on it. And I feel like
Mhm.
we've improved our way into so many fun projects and also so many projects that never happened. And we're going to talk about the ones that didn't happen because they're almost as interesting as the ones that did.
I would absolutely agree with that statement. Yeah.
So I want us to take a step back and take our listeners back to the year 2004.
Oh boy. Okay.
It was winter. It was December 2004. We were just past an election.
Which one was that
George
one?
George W. Bush had just been reelected.
Yes.
I was in high school, had a good close group of friends. I had not met Will yet,
Hmm.
but the friends that I had then, and luckily still do, were also interested in storytelling. We had a message board, if you remember such things, to tell stories online, where we kind of go back and forth. It was also in space. We love science fiction.
Hmm.
And a friend of mine, River, came to me. We were both waiting for our rides because we didn't have licenses yet, and and there's probably falling snow. Let's say there was falling snow. Snow was coming down.
Love it.
It was toward the end of the semester, almost winter break. River comes over and says, "Hey, I have this idea for a musical. Do you want to help me make it?" And I said, "Oh, interesting. Yes." And because I was already doing improv by then, I was already in
Right.
theater classes. I knew about this. I said, "Oh, but what if it was a musical movie?" We did some collaboration with a couple other friends and pulled together some very silly songs and into a script that I wrote that was for some weird reason was called Golanci Golanci, which in Russian means the Dutch, and there are no people of Dutch descent anywhere in the movie. Do you know the story?
I do. It's been so long, and then as you were describing it, I was like, "Oh, right, the infamous Galanti Galanti." Because by the time I had heard about it, it was like a top secret. Like, "Oh, you don't know about Galanti Galanti?" And then suddenly River would start singing the songs, and
Yeah,
I was like,
absolutely.
Did I miss something?" And the answer is yes, I did.
And here's a bunch of high school freshmen who are deep into Douglas Adams and Monty Python and Mel
Hmm.
Brooks movies. And that's kind of the synthesis. That's what made Golanci Golanci the crazy thing. Like, there's no way you could ever make a movie like that. And we couldn't even make it based on what we were imagining. Like, okay, there's three different stories. There's a pirate, but he changes his ways and falls in love with a blind woman, and they sail to Africa to live happily ever after. But wait, under the ocean, the Pope
I forgot about that.
the Pope meets a giant squid, and first they fight, but then they become friends.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it ends fine. But wait, behind all the scenes of all of that, some evil Canadians are going to destroy the world with a Brussels sprout based weapon of mass destruction. Because of course it's 2004. We were all thinking about weapons of mass destruction.
That was strangely on the forefront of our minds.
Which interestingly, we only shot ever one scene. We spent
Oh,
4 years trying to make this movie. We shot one scene in the parking lot of our high school that is just River dressed in like a U-Haul moving blanket and I think an extension cord for a belt, just sort of like dancing around in what was
that
going to be the
tracks.
opening shot of the movie. And sadly, and or maybe not sadly, that footage does not exist anymore.
The scene that I remember from Galancy Galancy, and this was described to me, I don't know how long ago now at this point, but you sat down and told me about the time where you were sitting on an airplane. You have a very Douglas Adams two heads, but you're twin brothers, but one of them is dead. And so you're just like you're trying to save the world, and you're on this airplane with this dead head essentially just on you. And that right there was like, I want to hang out with this man. I like where his head's at.
Which one? The living one or the dead one?
We'll figure it out.
Yes, yes. There were Siamese twins.
That's what it was.
They were Siamese twins, and yes, sadly, one of them did perish in the course of the film. Everybody we knew had a role in this movie, and sadly, it never happened. Or maybe it did, and it's just simply was too provocative for American audiences. We were not allowed to release it.
Or any audiences.
Anywhere on Earth.
Nowhere.
So we never made that movie. However, in the process of drafting the film, we thought, okay, what do movies have? Okay, they have scripts, they have cameras, they have actors, they have costumes, they have all these things. Like, oh, they are production companies. Production companies are part of this. You have to have a company to make a movie. We knew that was the case.
Right.
And so of kind of the three of us who were sort of the masterminds, each had a different company that we came up with that was going to be supposed to be produced by so-and-so, and Double Diamond, I think, was one of them. And mine was Obscure Studios. That was the name I came up with. That's why I came up with the name in the first place, because I thought this is going to be very obscure. No one's going to get any of the references in this movie, and it's true. And so of all the things of Galancy Galancy, the only thing that survives to this day is a production company.
Is a little production company with big dreams and a little wallet. By that point, I was a freshman and you were a sophomores in high school. And I was like, I want to be with these cool kids. These are the cool kids right here.
And as I recall, the first play we were in together was Murder in the Cathedral.
Mm-hmm.
And you were one of the knights who murdered the archbishop, and I was one of the priests.
Yeah. I
And
almost
we
didn't
had-
make it.
You didn't almost make it?
I almost didn't get into that show.
Man, that would have
Yeah.
changed the whole course of history.
It's weird to think about. Our director, the high school teacher slash director, he pulled me aside and he said, I didn't cast you, but I want to try something. And I said, okay. And he pulls me into the theater of the auditorium and he walks way back there, way in the far back, and he says, all right, say those lines again. And that was when I was like, oh, I have to project. And that was the moment that I got into the show. But I almost didn't meet you or the fellow compatriots when we were sitting backstage and being goofing off, being really ridiculous.
And you've been around ever since.
I stuck around. You deal with my shenanigans a lot more than I have to deal with yours, and I appreciate that. I am a ridiculous human being,
And
and I appreciate you.
that is why I keep you around. Do you remember the first time I asked you to be part of Obscure Studios to make a movie or something with me? Do you remember that?
I think it was something along you had a class. You had a film class or whatever have you. And you had asked me to be in part of some little short thing in there. And that was such like a non-trivial thing, but it definitely sparked a, hey, let's work together moment for us. And back then you had this majestically amazing afro that so many people haven't seen nowadays. But this thing was, it had its own history, its own stories. You can go reach inside and pull out a whole city. It was amazing.
I mean, that's where all the good ideas were hidden,
Mm-hmm.
deep inside. Our signature for a while was making trailers for movies that did not exist and that we had intention of making. We did several of those.
Mm-hmm.
Those were fun. And then came kind of the big break. Then came Riley's dorm. Will you tell us about Riley's dorm?
Riley's dorm. So at that time, Johnny had just received a fairly new at the time MacBook laptop, and it had a webcam. And he pulls out this laptop and he's like, I want to do something where uh, we're in college. Like you and I are college roommates and we hate each other. And the whole premise was like Riley was simply just trying to like reach out into the world. Like, the internet was new at the time. That gives you an idea of how old we are. The internet was new at the time, and Riley was like trying to do this blog because Dr. Horrible sing along blog, things like that. And it was like it'd be really cool. And then the roommate comes in and just destroys everything and is just a freaking menace. It was all improv, so it was like, okay, go. And Riley, Johnny would sit there and he'd be sitting on his laptop, just chalking, "Yo, it's Riley," or whatever voice. I can't even do that voice. I still can't do that voice. And he would spout off like, "Yo, it's Riley, day, my roommate," and then he would be signaling off the camera. He'd be like, "You're in here, your turn." And then I'd come in and I'd just see what I could do. And he had a lot of different stuff around his room, and I was like, "What's this? I'm gonna play with this." He's like, yeah. It was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun, and I think that dynamic of the two roommates who absolutely hate each other
Hmm.
was the beating heart and soul of that show. We brought so many other people alongside, which was so fun. I feel like most of our friends made a cameo at one point or another.
Oh
We
yeah.
did 96 episodes in a year.
In 1 year, we would sit there because it was right as we were done filming and cut, edit, boom,
Edit,
start
done.
editing,
Next.
throw it
And
out.
we could do like 3 or 4 in a night if we had like enough like sugar in us and caffeine.
There was probably a time where we had 5 people in that room trying to be quiet, and it's
Waiting
like,
their turn to
w-
like enter the
y-
scene. Yeah.
yeah.
Because the camera never moved. It sat on the bed and
Hmm.
it always only showed this one angle every single episode, and people would kind of come pop in and out. Um,
Yeah.
and there could be yeah, we could have like five. We did like a New Year's party episode I recall, which had at least like 5 or 6 people coming and
Yeah.
going throughout.
Yeah.
And I recall I got locked out accidentally got locked out during the filming of that, and that became the plot of
It's
the
like
thing was like Riley's gone. Riley can't get back into his own party.
his own party. I remember that because we all of us kept rolling with it. And since you were locked out outside, there was a window where we could see you. And so you're just like, you're looking in at us being like, and all of us just like, nope, we're in the moment.
Yeah, we were so lucky in Flagstaff where we were living. We both lived at the time that we had so
Hmm.
many friends who were interested in theater and acting, who were just, as big a goofballs, almost as big goofballs as the two of us,
Oh
that we
yeah.
had this huge community of people to draw on, which still is kind of helping us make projects all these years later with people connected to Flagstaff and to Theatricos Theater Company, where we both were
Hmm.
involved in community theater.
Hmm.
It was just a really cool, good creative community that we had there. Coming back to Riley's dorm, so we had this was probably our most like popular project, I think,
Hmm.
that we made during that time period, and this was like 2008, 2009, which was a cool time to be making content, but also like the exact wrong time to be making content. I'm thinking in my head like we were too early to be YouTube famous. However, um, it's the only time when or one of only a handful of times when I've been stopped by a stranger on the street and been like, "Oh, Riley, I think I've seen your stuff." Like people, like we actually like had this tiny bubble of people who didn't know us personally but knew the show. So we were actually very briefly, very kind of a little bit hometown famous. Post Riley's dorm, we had a couple of years where I feel like we were putting out just like something every other week, and that was I think our most experimental period. I'm thinking of things like After the Rapture, Obscure Carol, which I want to talk
Hmm.
about those a little bit,
Hmm.
and just all kinds of little like short films, like the doggy bag one, and we were just trying a lot. Like we did like a couple silent films, like trying to emulate that period. Like we were doing so many things. Do you have like a favorite one that you can think of, like a project that we worked on?
I really like the Christmas Carol one a
Me
lot.
too.
Um, you did one that I wasn't even a part of that I really, really liked a lot. And that was with your friend, and she's going through this horrible trauma. You guys went to Twin Arrows. You went to
Oh,
various locations,
borderline, yeah.
borderline. I really liked that one, and I was unfortunately not able to be a part of it, but all those shots was really artistically well chosen and um, easily one of my favorites. That was not even me.
At first, we are just like, we're goofing off. And they were like, actually, maybe you want to be filmmakers? Like, seriously? And so we started kind of thinking about cinematography a bit more, thinking about audio a bit more. I love an obscure carol. I watch it every year. Like, it's my Christmas tradition to watch. And like, we did a lot of cool, like, we like got a lighting rig that wasn't good, but it was
Yeah.
our first time trying to like actually light a scene properly. And we got we got a really terrible like sound boom that was like literally one of those painter's poles with a microphone attached to the end. And every time, and I think you will ended up like holding it a lot because you were tall enough to get it out of the shot. But every time you like had to move your hand a little bit, it would make this horrible like screeching noise.
It was the worst.
But like we did like the cool like some trick shots, like the shot where you disappear.
Yeah.
I love that one, and I still think it holds up.
I feel like that one was the one where we genuinely tried to be filmmakers, and I do feel proud of it. Even though at the time when you go look at it, especially nowadays, you're just like, what is this production value? It's like, well, we had a Target camcorder and like whatever thing we could scrounge up from the theater that they would be willing to let us borrow. That was
Shout out
it.
to the Canon FS10 in Hot Rod Red. May it rest in peace.
I miss those days for sure when we got the chance to really do any of that. The podcasting world is a real treat, and I'm very happy that we get to do it. But there's something very special about, hey, Johnny, what do you think about this? And then you and I are like bouncing ideas back off, and suddenly we're in the woods.
Yeah, I mean, I also think about the times, with those two cameras when we were filming for a short time plays for theatricals and creating the DVDs for the cast members to have, like as their
Yeah.
kind of like keepsake, and how much like the crazy amount of work it was to get the shots right, to edit everything so it looked good. And do you remember like I want to say hours, but it was probably days we spent in the basement of Klein Library at NAU burning
Yeah.
DVDs?
People sometimes would join us. They're like, oh, we'd love to see your process. And then they come and be like, wow, this is rough.
Yeah, this is what we got. We have like borrowed and broken equipment, and we
We're
can
just
burn about 12 CDs in 2 hours.
two
So
hours.
I want to
I
turn to some of our unfinished projects. Is there one in particular you want to talk about?
There is one that I've forgotten its name. Like I still think it is a solid script that stands up, and it was the space one. And we even built some of the set in our friend who had a just happened to have a workshop, and they were like, "Yeah, I should like come on over," and we built some of the set. We put it in my garage. Our ideas was so big, and what we had was not enough for us to really. We didn't want to do it a disservice because we liked it so much.
A sci-fi epic called Bismillah. Space battles, religious tensions on Earth, and we built, I think, 1/6 of the
Yeah.
set for the control center of the starship, of the spaceship. And I'd like to formally apologize to your mom for leaving it in her garage until she sold her house many years later.
Way too long.
Way too long. So sorry about that. We really thought we were going to be able to pull this off, but the more we got into it, the more we realized like, oh, this is the hardest type of production to pull off. Like we don't have special effects.
Yeah,
My mom made a whole bunch of costumes for us.
that's
At least like
right.
4 or 5, at least like prototypes. I might still have one somewhere like of the jumpsuits, like which I thought were like pretty slick. But like
Yeah.
realizing, oh my gosh, like when you're doing this kind of like speculative world building, like you have to build everything from scratch. Like
Hmm.
we would have had to try to build a spaceship and the inside
Yeah.
and the outside, like even a model, like all of that. And yeah, I think the more we got into it, the more we realized we were in way over our heads.
I genuinely still think I think I still have the script somewhere hiding. I do think that is a very solid script, and if by some chance we get a chance to really make it, I would love that. That one was great. Poverty with a View was another one that I feel like we could have done that. It was at a time where people started to think about leaving and moving away and having a life. And so we filmed a couple of things because that's kind of been the tagline for Flagstaff for I don't know how many years. It's poverty with a view. It's a beautiful place. It is expensive. We had a great idea where it was a bunch of people are forced to live together in this apartment.
Poverty with a View was going to be our next web series. It was sort of the natural next step from Riley's dorm. Like, if you force people to live together, there will be conflict. And if there is conflict, there is a story. And if there's conflict, then there's also comedy, right? That's all there. And so we were going to do it like bigger and with location shooting, and we did some of that, and we managed to scrape together one episode before I moved away.
Yeah.
And broke up the band a little bit. We filmed kind of that, and then suddenly I realized, I'm leaving. Like, we're not going to be able to finish this right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I moved away to Washington, and about a year later, once I was there, suddenly I was unemployed and didn't have anywhere to live and had to figure all those things out. And so a year later, I was sort of more settled. And I remember like, I have this footage on my hard drive. Like, I should finish that. I should finish that episode. And I did. And we finally got it up later. And there is one shot in there. So it's all filmed in Flagstaff, Arizona, except for the shot of I don't know who it's supposed to be, but it ends up just being me putting the key in the door and like turning the knob. Like, and that was my house in Tacoma.
Yeah, and then it was like blackout or something like that. I remember that.
Things changed. I moved away. You
Mm-hmm.
eventually moved away. We now live on opposite sides just about of the United States, but we continue to hang out and have these ideas. We managed to make 2 more short films in the 20-teens. We had The Closet. If you remember, we were going to have we were each going to make a Halloween film, like a horror film. And you left me hanging.
I did. I left you hanging so bad. I felt so bad because I had a great concept. I had a great idea. It was going to be so you had The Closet, which was phenomenal. I thought that was fantastic. Mine was, I was going to have this little girl who gets possessed, and like slowly the whole family starts disappearing until the mom finally opens the closet door, and I was like, so I had a great idea, and it fell through so fast.
So a lot of what happened then was sort of Obscure Studios continued to live on as like a social media presence.
Mm-hmm.
We had this like vendetta against koalas, and that was like a recurring theme on social media. And
I forgot about
we really do not like koalas, and we don't like, and you better not like them either. The other thread we had was pretending we were actual Hollywood celebrities, and so I would spent at least 1, maybe 2 Oscar ceremonies live tweeting it as if the 2 of us were there.
As we were there.
As if we were there, and as if we had like a beef with like every other like celebrity there. It's like, oh man, The Rock. Did you see the look he just gave me?
Mm-hmm. Oh man, that was back when that platform was really hopping, and like everyone was paying attention to that platform. And
We were big on what used to be Twitter
yeah,
before it became the dumpster fire it is today.
there was one that we did after we moved away from each other.
Yep,
And
I want to talk about that one.
Yeah,
Take us through it.
yeah. Do you remember the name of it?
As Seen on TV.
As Seen on TV. And when it was like this fortuitous moment where we had both moved away from Arizona, but so
We were both visiting
we were both
for a
visiting.
weekend.
It was one of those like, we have to do something. We have to do something now. And we reached out to Theatricos, and they were very kind in letting us use the space yet again, as always. The premise was this person just out and about gets abducted by aliens, and the aliens are questioning him about it was either TV shows or commercials.
TV from 20 to 50 years ago, like the stuff that they had seen in their distant star system. They were like, hey, we have questions about I Love Lucy. We've come all this way. We've abducted one human being. You need to answer our questions about, I think it was I Love Lucy. And also, where's the beef?
Where's the beef? Yeah, that's right. And I think that was a classic example of hey, let's do something. All right, sounds great. Let's do it. What are we doing? Oh, let's figure this out. And then you had the idea. We rolled and rolled, and then it was, being in the theater was really nice because we could pull props and random things, and
We built an alien out of random pieces of costuming that I think looked okay. Yeah.
given the budget, I think it was great.
The Closet and As Seen on TV are our only short films that we ever shot in HD.
Mm-hmm.
We actually had good
Amazing.
resolution. And we knew enough by then to like make a nice, like a more polished looking product than our other stuff. So I'm really proud of those two and how they turned
Right.
out.
Nowadays, where we do have that technology in our pocket, it's everyone can see, it's really game changing. Back from when I had a flip phone, I think you also had a flip
Yep.
phone at the time, and so we had to rely on those camcorders because that's all we had.
That brings us to 2020, the pandemic. Everything shut down. We're in, thousands of miles apart. And so what do? I say, hey, I have an idea. And you said,
Let's do it. Sounds
let's do
great.
it. Yeah. Yes. And
Yes, and
we did this.
uh,
Um, so we revived an inside joke from a trailer for a fake movie that we made in I think 2010 or 2011. That's like, oh, this, starring this person who you might know from Captain Radio and the Mutant Mole People from the 11th Dimension, which was just a total throwaway, like goofy, like what would be a stupid name for a movie?
we'd never even thought about it when we were making it. It was just like, yeah, that's funny.
Yep,
Great.
done. Joke done. Joke done. And I was like, what if though? But hey, I don't know why this came to me, but like, what if we actually made that?
Mm.
And what if we made it as a podcast, as an audio drama?
At that time, I was living in Hawaii. You were living in Tacoma, and we reached out to the people in Arizona to be like, "Hey, we're all just kind of sitting at home. Do you want to do this with us?" And they're like, "Yes, and."
The process of doing Captain Radio has been so fun and so interesting to learn the ins and outs of podcasting, of like audio mixing and engineering, and also writing for like these kind of movies for your ear, because
Hmm.
it kind of lets us do the thing we always wanted to do, which was we want to make these big, flashy, like huge, high budget things, but we didn't have a budget. But with audio drama, you can actually do that. Like I can send Will into space and have him get eaten by a space whale. And what you don't realize is what you've just heard is a wet sponge and a dog.
And a dog.
You mix those two together, space whale. So it's also been the most difficult, challenging, frustrating project to put together of anything I've ever done in my entire life.
Yeah.
Minus parenting. That's harder. But only by a little bit.
Still, to this day, we're doing it remote, and
Yeah.
all of our actors are remote.
They're all,
And
I mean, they're all over the world at this point.
actually, at this point, you're right.
We cover multiple continents, I think, now of actors, which is so fun and so interesting. But like the other, we run into the same problem with the first time we did sci-fi is, oh, you still have to make everything from scratch. Like I have to make
Yeah.
laser sound effects. I have to, we have to do this whole like background and things. And so it's been fun. And I look forward to finishing it up soon, but it's also been, it's been a lot of work, and it's taken a lot longer than I thought it would
Yeah.
to do.
We've also learned from it a lot too, in the sense of we're always struggling, as I think most people are, with technology and learning how to do a podcast. It's like, okay, what does that piece of software look like? We go learn that piece of software. But because of all of that, at least for me, and I'm sure for you as well, it is rekindled that flame of like, I can now do that thought. We can make that happen now, and as an audio drama, there's podcasts and there's audio dramas. It's like, oh my god, we can make that happen now, and that's really exciting. And I started writing. You tend to go for the sci-fi things. I go dark, and I don't know why, but
But I
I'm
love
like,
it.
yeah, I've been leaning towards these like darker themes and doing things like that. And I was like, okay, we had space, but what if we had detectives in the real dirty nitty-gritty things, or the westerns and things like that. And so we want to finish Captain Radio, but our minds are racing with just so many other projects. At least for me.
Obscure Studios was sort of dormant for a while. It was
Hmm.
like, how I don't know how we keep going. Like I don't know how we continue. Like we have a social media presence, I have a website, like, but it felt more like it was like an archive of things we used to do. And then suddenly it was like, oh, we can do that. Like we can do this when you're in Texas and I'm in Washington, but we can still put together something that makes it feels like we're in the same room with like kind of the magic of like editing and audio. And it's opened up all these really fun windows. And so yeah, I'm constantly writing new scripts and
Hmm.
pitching you new ideas. I think we can say what our next project is.
You want to do it?
I think we should do it. I think
Yeah,
okay.
I'm really
So the
excited
next so
about it.
what's gonna happen after we kind of wrap Captain Radio is a podcast with a much shorter, easier to say and pronounce name. It's called Belgrave, and it is
Hmm.
another fictional podcast. Another fictional podcast. It takes place in the real world, but kind of a twisted reality. So there's some supernatural elements. The kind of short log line is a couple people working at a self storage unit facility open up a unit and discover something otherworldly. And they open up another one and they find something different. They open up another one. And every week it's a different weird thing that they keep encountering in these storage units that's
Hmm.
threatening to upend this small town.
When Johnny first sent me the scripts, I couldn't stop laughing. I thought it was the funniest thing. I said, "Let's do it right now," and he said, "We got to finish Captain Radio." And I was like, you're right, absolutely." And something that I think is worth mentioning is with, especially with Captain Radio, the reason why it has taken so long to put this one out is our dearly beloved Rob Peters, who was playing Orion, passed away because of cancer. And it's been really hard to replace is not the right word because we're not trying to
No.
replace him, but it's become a challenge of like who can fill his shoes to finish out Captain Radio for us. And we've searched long and hard. We've got some really solid ideas now, but that was because we were going to release this this early this year. I think our plan was to release it in
Yeah.
June, and Rob passing away, we didn't feel it was right to put it away or to just like immediately start going, and then when we picked it back up, it's like, okay, well, who do we get? That's kind of why it's taken us so long, but it is something that we're still excited to put out Captain Radio, and we still think it's a good story. We just want to make sure that we do right by Rob.
Yeah, losing Rob is such a huge blow to the whole cast, to this it's it's hard to imagine it without Rob. And it's going to be different going forward. And it makes me kind of rethink how we're going to approach Captain Radio going forward because I don't want
Mhm.
to diminish anything. He's brought so much to that role in
Mhm.
and made it his own. Yeah, we just want to do it right by Rob, like you said.
Mhm.
But once we find a way to wrap that up successfully and in a way that feels satisfying for us, I'm excited to kind of move on to the next project and something that's I think going to be bigger and better, but also more sustainable for us to do. And I'm a planner. You know I'm a planner.
Oh yeah.
And so you've probably seen me making like edits in that Google Doc. And so at this point, like from when from when I pitched it to you, and I don't know if this is like a year or so ago, I have 40 episodes planned, spread across 4 seasons, 10 episodes
Uh-huh.
each, and there's like four different arcs that have to happen, and here's all these other side characters we're gonna need, and like the more I think about it, like the more convoluted it gets. But I think I'm so excited about it. I think about it all the time, and I'm
Oh
constantly
yeah.
opening up my phone and jotting, like, "Ooh, that's a good idea. Like that should be an episode, or this should happen in that episode in season 3 of a thing I haven't
Hmm.
even finished
Hmm.
writing yet." But that's just kind of how my mind works. Once I get excited about something, I can't stop thinking about it.
It has definitely lit a fire under me and doing this yet again. When we started Riley's dorm, it was that same feeling of like, well, let's keep going. We have all these ideas, we have all these plans, da, 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 da. And then we bring our friends in, like, oh, this is really exciting, and we're just going and going and going, and then just like we stop because life. And so I'm getting that feeling again, and it's very, very exciting, and I love that feeling. I love being that creative. Let's go.
And it's amazing that we can still be like have that kind of feeling
Hmm.
20 years in. Like how many things on the internet last 20 years?
20 years, we can almost drink. It's crazy to think about. I mean, there's so many things out there that it started and it was huge back then, and you forget about them nowadays. Here we
Mhm.
are, just like plugging along.
Yeah, and I hope that when we are, very old and rickety, and I was gonna say gray haired, but I'm already there. But when
You may.
you're gray haired, like me,
Ooh.
then we will continue. If you have hair, I'm hoping that we will still be
Just
doing
bald.
this. That we'll still be having fun. That we'll still be telling stories. That we'll still be making each other laugh. That's
Mhm.
been the best part about Obscure Studios. I think is that it's kind of it's sort of been this in between through line of our whole friendship.
I think
Not to make you cry, but if you want to, now is a good time.
no, it's a good time. I agree. I keep saying this, but it's like it's the genius of your brain that I mean, because how many scripts have been from me? Not a whole lot. It's been I'll run into a room and I'll say this crazy thing, but then it's your writing on the page, and it's really what set the tone for Obscure Studios. And so I think a lot of it comes from you, but it also comes from us. Just throwing, hey, let's go to the mall and let's go do this thing, or you know, what about the rapture where everyone's gone and then your little sister at the time, like, you want to be friends? No. Okay. Like, I love it. I love that so much.
It's incredible that we're still doing it. I like that we're still doing it. Thanks for being part of every crazy idea I've had and keeping this 20-year game of improv fresh
Happily. Yes, and to another 20 years.
to another
Let's
20
do it.
years. If you would like to help us celebrate the 20th anniversary of Obscure Studios, head over to obscurestudios.net. It's been our home on the web since 2008. And you can get merch there. We're going to have some special anniversary merchandise on our TeePublic store. It's going to be a good time. Go back, rewatch some of your favorites, share them with friends. We're just excited to celebrate this with you, because we can make all the stuff in the world, all the short films and audio dramas in the world, but if you don't watch or listen, it's weird. It's just
So
us
weird.
yelling at ourselves. We'd rather be yelling at you.
Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell a stranger. Who knows? They might enjoy it as well. Head on down to obscurestudios.net or jweberly.com for more. Come and check it out.
More shenanigans.
Space.
We say the word space a whole lot.
We talked so much about space.